dive right in, man. We've got a lot to talk about. I think this is going to be more conversational, and this is going to be a lot of stories.
We're hanging out at the bar and just going back 20 years and been like, oh man, connection, crazy.
And, keep the whiskey coming, please. So let's start for the listeners who, I mean, you're a man that doesn't need to be introduced, but they probably don't know your life story, your background coming up. Why don't you give us that?
Oh man. Incredibly blessed to be born to two amazing parents that love me, which is more than anybody could ever ask for. I had a father that was still is a renowned narcotics officer. During his time, stealing planes full of cocaine from Pablo Escobar, and what was made normal, watching how to cook meth in a show taking place in Albuquerque, New Mexico. My dad was one of the first to figure out how chemically to make meth, so he could put in place some policies to prevent how much drugs you could buy over the counter, and running Smurfs to go steal stuff to make meth. Those were all policies that were really, I think you could be attributed to my father. My mom, an incredible, kind woman that was fierce. Like she loved and...
So you feared your mom?
Oh man, I still fear
more than your dad?
Yes. Yeah.
That's an Irish family.
A 6'2", 6'3", 250-pound narcotics officer, Olympic level athlete. He's a puppy dog compared to my mom. Yeah.
So did you inherit your athletic ability from your dad?
I'm the runt, to tell you the truth. My athletic ability, as far as like the Kennedy family goes, is they're ashamed of me. They're like, oh, you fought for the world title twice, but you lost. So do they call you world champion or just two-time loser? So in the pedigree of athlete in my family is I'm not being humble here. I'm the shortest. I am the least muscular and least athletic. I have hair on my legs. They all look like Norwegian gods. And then there's like the short runt Tim that they used to occasionally throw a bone of leftovers to. It's
amazing. When you surround yourself with people, how high of a bar they hold. And it sounds like the Kennedy family holds a high bar.
Yeah.
Now it was your brother that sort of pushed you into combatives and self-defense. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, back to being the small runt of the family, my brother early, freshman year in high school, he's 6 foot, 200 something pounds. All his friends are giants. They're all athletes. And then there was a game that was, hey, let's pick up Tim and throw him in the pool. And that game lasted until they couldn't pick me up. And then it was then they couldn't get me in the pool. And then it was, oh, we're taking Chris to the hospital because he tried to get Tim in the pool. And then it was, okay, we're going to take Jordan, Chris, Nick, and Kevin to the hospital because they tried to get them in the pool. So at some point they're like, we're at a point of diminished returns. Let's just not play with that crazy coked out kid. And we'll just leave him in the corner as the hairy retard.
So you grew up in SLO, San Luis Obispo.
Yep. Yeah, I grew up in Atascadero. I was born in San Luis Obispo in the General Hospital. Well, they used to do deliveries, which they don't even do anymore. But born in San Luis Obispo, raised in Atascadero and Cambria.
In grammar school, were you playing traditional sports, basketball, soccer?
No. Martial arts. I started young.
What was the first martial arts?
The first one was Shotokan karate. Then it was Taekwondo, and then it was
because Karate Kid. Let's be honest. Nobody knew what jujitsu was back then.
No, it
because
didn't exist.
UFC hadn't even. Yes.
Yeah. When I finally started getting into jujitsu, the closest I could get was Japanese jujitsu called Taikaria Kia Jujitsu. And tragically, my two senseis have both passed. One of them horrifically defending his family. He was actually killed by the sword that he was given when he received his black belt when he was fighting a home invader. He got the guy out and transpired from blood loss after saving his family's life. Pretty incredible.
California.
Yeah.
Well, as a California native, that sort of pisses me off.
But I would have to drive to Santa Barbara to train with a purple belt. I would drive 2.5 hours to go find a purple. That was the closest belted real Brazilian jiu-jitsu guy at that time, was 2.5 hours away.
But you weren't making that drive every day.
Not every day, but I mean, it would be like every couple of months would have to go and check in and see how we're doing and he couldn't even belt us. That was just to see like the cross-pollination of grappling, where we're at. So I was wrestling, I was doing, by this time, Hawaiian Kempo and then Japanese Jiu-Jitsu. You still had to like go back to the source and try and get good.
Was that how sparse it was back then with Jiu-Jitsu?
With Jiu-Jitsu.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So at what point did you join the pit with Chuck Liddell?
Oh man, you're just going to bring up all these humiliating stories.
Of course. Yeah, I mean, that's the point of it. We want vulnerability on this podcast.
You're going to get it. So I'm in a Atascadero at Dokan Jiu-Jitsu, which is the Japanese Jiu-Jitsu school. And in walks Jake Shields and Chuck Liddell. And they just saw Jiu-Jitsu in a place that was 15 minutes away from San Luis Obispo. So like, hey, let's go check this place out. I hear they spar. And so they just came in. I was the best grappler in the room. And I mean, I felt like a child isn't even fair. Like I was a useless bag of blood that they were just mopping the floor with ease. Like the hardest part was just moving my body. And I had no control of it.
How old were you when you made that leap into the pit?
I was 17. 17, yeah.
And already had a wrestling background?
Yeah, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, and traditional martial arts background.
Did you find yourself ill-prepared when you stepped in with these guys?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it was horrific. At first, you have to have, to the ladies out here, you just can't understand this. You have to have, as a 16-year-old, testosterone that is being pumped from your brain and then magnified by your stupid balls to understand like there's a degree of invincibility that you're like, I can do anything. And then when somebody comes in, your brain can't even compute that you can't do it. So when Chuck and Jake are like murdering me, I was like, well, this doesn't make sense. Like there's something wrong here in the calculus of why I can't, deal with these other two humans. I'm obviously a more elite athlete. I'm clearly a better jiu-jitsu practitioner. And that is like the 16-year-old invincible brain being like, literally, I could not understand how I could not beat them. And even at the end, after they've just like smashed me for 60 minutes, I'm still sitting there like, well, that was weird. You're like, still not making sense that they're just better. They're more trained. They're more practiced. They're more rehearsed. They're better conditioned. They're better athletes.
So the pit is just renowned.
Current champion Glover Teixeira coming from the pit.
I mean, just a producer of champions such as yourself.
Almost champion.
Well, you're world class. You're a champion to me. I love you, buddy. The pedigree that it attracted, I mean, that just had to be such a high bar. Was every single day? And I'm assuming you started attending every single day at some point. Was it just, was it 2 to 3 hours? How long were you there just getting after it?
I mean, John Hackelman, the kind of founder, Hawaiian Kempo of Arroyo Grande, California. We had the pit at his house, which was the octagon and the hill, wheelbarrow, sledgehammers. If you follow John Hackelman, you know about this. If you train with him, it's horrible. We have the dunes in Pismo. We have slow kickboxing in San Luis Obispo, and we have the Hawaiian Kempo school, the pit in Arroyo Grande. That was kind of like the circle of places that you would train at when you're in camp. And everybody from the entire nation would come there at the time. Randy Couture, Matt Lindland, Tito Ortiz, everyone that is the who's who would come to the pit to train. I was hanging out with Randy like 2 weeks ago, and I'm like, do you remember rolling with a 17-year-old shaved head kid? And I went over and I was like giving it to Matt Lindland a little bit, and you commented like, who is that kid? And I remember that. And he's like, man, I do remember. Like, that was me, man. Man, that was me. That was me. And he's like, that was, and I was thinking back that far, 20 years, 25 years, Randy Couture was in the pit smashing me, just so we're super clear, absolutely smashing me. And that was normal, was just to have that level of guys come through.
I know you are your worst critic, or at least just doing research on you for this podcast. I mean, you had some harsh words about yourself before 9/11. And I'm going to quote a self-serving, narcissistic, ethnocentric fucking piece of shit.
That's about right. Yep.
Yet you were a firefighter and EMT as a teenager.
Yep.
What was the feeling behind that comment, even though you were a high achiever at that, or overachiever at that age?
I mean, we could look at some of the best basketball and football players on the planet right now, and very high achievers that hit their wives. You know, they're just horrible humans. You know, like just because you have a capability or a competency or a God-given gift, like that doesn't make you a good human. And at the time, you know, I had every opportunity to be a good human. You know, a loving father, a loving mother, you know, coming from a position like where I could go to any school I wanted. You know, I could, as an athlete, I could literally do anything. But instead, you know, like I'm going and fighting bare knuckles in Mexico, and I'm knocking up multiple women, possibly contracting HIV. You know, like these were conscious decisions that were circumventing every opportunity for success for an absolute self-serving ego.
So let me ask this, because Sebastian Junger wrote a great book called Tribe. Was that also a product of the people you surrounded yourself with at that time?
Yeah, I lost my best friend at 15, and that best friend was a great human. And he was, and all of our friends around that nucleus were great Christian, hardworking, just good kids. And I wanted nothing to do with them. You know, I wanted where's the nearest drug dealer? Because that's going to be my friend. You know, who's the guy that can fight? Who's the guy that has the fast car? You know, who wants to go and hop and throw eggs out of the car? Like I wanted nothing to do with that purity. I wanted nothing to do with that innocence, because innocence was lost. And so I was searching for ways to be destructive. You know, like I didn't know how to cope. I didn't know how to grieve yet. And so a form of a dangerous, you know, adolescent disaster was, you know, practice from 15 to, 25.
Did 9/11 change things for you? Because you enlisted shortly after that on the 18 X-ray program, which is a direct route after boot camp to Special Forces.
There were a bunch of catalysts that became the genesis of the movement. It took 18 months after 9/11 for me to be in boots on ground. But on 9/11, I was in a line of a few thousand people in San Luis Obispo at the recruiter's office next to the Vaughns, as I was trying to get to talk to any recruiter. You know, I didn't know anything. But a couple of months before that, us standing on the beach in Morro Bay, California, you know, with a couple of women pregnant, neither of which were the women that I was with. To a degree, I thought I had HIV, and crashed my motorcycle, patriarch of the family. My grandpa is dying. Every breath that he took with emphysema was one breath less than the prior breath. And, took all my clothes off. I looked out west to the fog, and I just started swimming west. And growing up with an Olympic level water polo player in the family, we can swim. So most of our corporal punishment involved a pool with gallons of water and stuff like that. So, you know, knowing what I could swim then, you know, in the 45 minutes that I was out there, you know, that's 2 miles out. You know, I'm 2 miles out from the beach. And in the fog now, I can't hear the waves. I can't see the rock. You know, and fog does really weird things to the brain and to sound. Isn't it crazy?
It's almost vertigo. Yeah. Loss of orientation.
Totally. You know which way's up because I'm floating in water, so obviously water's down, but that's the only thing that you know. You're like, I don't know northeast, southwest. The light is being refracted in different ways, and sound, what I think was a wave, was that a foghorn? You have no idea. Was that I swear I heard it to the left, but that time I thought I heard it to the right. Had I rotated 180 degrees in the time that thing just went off, you know, like that's all going on in your brain in the real time. And then I heard slapping on the side of a rock or a boat, and then like this low grumbling as a little Coast Guard cutter cruised up next to me.
No kidding.
Yeah, this old woman, from what they say, this is hearsay because it was told to me by the captain of the boat. His legs were just hanging off the side of the boat. I'm butt ass naked in the water. I've been swimming for 45 minutes. And he's like, hey son, what are you doing down there? I'm like, well, I'm swimming. still a cocky little shit. And he's like, I could see that. And he's like, so what's going on? So I kind of download to him what's happening in my life. He's like, I was going to offer you to pull you out of the water, but truth, I'm just going to leave you in the drink. Like, but I'm going to ask you one time. Do you want to come on this boat or do you want to stay in the water? And I'm just treading water. Like what a badass, right? Like what an amazing human to be able to sit there and understand how to talk to such a disaster of a human and to be able to get through the layers of bullshit to connect. And
he saw you drowning.
Yeah, I was drowning.
I mean, no pun on words. He saw you drowning in life. Yeah.
And he's like, so what do you want? I'm like, man, this water's cold. And he like leans up. Yeah, I see that. Yeah. And
that's no hit on the Kennedy family.
No,
it was the cold water. Okay.
No, it was maybe a little bit of both. But I finally get up on that boat and they throw one of those 100% wool Navy blankets. You know those?
Oh yeah.
Man, those don't feel good.
Those itch. Yeah.
They itch, and when your skin is so cold, it felt like a million needles, and nothing felt better. I wish there was a little real steel needles being jabbed in my skin because I was alive and I felt pain. And that was the kind of the beginning of what was going to be for the first time, making choices that were going to change the trajectory to not selfishness and not being an ethnocentric, narcissistic piece of shit. Yeah. Well,
you've definitely turned it around, but you're the one thing.
Still.
And we all are. The thing, the common thread amongst all the guys we serve within special operations, and I'm done with talking about Green Berets and SEALs and MARSOC and the AFSOC guys. They're just special operations studs in all the communities.
And I love you guys, though. By the way,
there's also bottom feeders. There's also guys that didn't perform in special operations, but they all had this healthy disrespect for authority, this wild side, which you have to do that job.
Yeah.
There's no way. I mean, you're asking young men to go forward and kill people on a repetitive deployment schedule, especially with the global war and terror. And there's very few humans that are cut out for that. Physically, I don't care about it. It's the mental. It's the mental toughness of that. So you make it through the SFAS, Special Forces Assessment and Selection. You make it through the Q course, and then which group did you report into?
I went to 7th group. And
at Bragg at the time.
At Bragg, yep.
Now they're in Florida.
Yep, they had just come from Puerto Rico. I missed that move by just a few months, so they had recently arrived at Fort Bragg. And during my time in the Q course, I was a professional fighter when I enlisted. I was top 10 in the world when I enlisted. And a Delta Force, now Team Sergeant in Special Forces, John Shrek McPhee.
Yes.
Man, what an amazing. Yeah. He was a leader, a really hard guy to work for. And but a man that I respect. So
you had a microscope on you.
I did.
They probably gave you a little more punishment than most.
But all good,
Yeah, professional.
Yep. Hard but fair. And when I graduated, John had intervened, and there's a special operations unit, a counterterrorism hostage rescue unit within special operations, within special forces specifically. At the time, it was called the SIF. Now it's called the CRIF. They've just been moved again to yet another thing. John had earmarked me to go to directly there. So when I graduated, I checked in and I was trying to go to the first company that was deploying because that's what we want to do, right?
Absolutely.
I was like, how do I get on the first trip overseas? And, John was kind of sitting there waiting to usher me into C-37, which was the 7th group hostage rescue unit, and then go to Iraq with them.
Did you hit Sephardic?
Yep.
Before that? Okay. Yep. Wow. So you were on a fast track.
Yeah. Unreal fast track. A lot of questions about my career. Like, wait, there's no way that right out of the Q course you go to Sephardic, and like, well, I didn't have a say in it. Like I had John McPhee telling me what to do, and my Sergeant Major Oquendo that was like, hey, here's where you're going. This is blah, 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 blah. And I was like, you're an E5 out of the Q course. You have no say in any of it. And that's kind of the backstory.
He's legendary. And the fact that he sort of selected you as a mentee is pretty damn awesome. So you go to Iraq. In what year was that? Where were you?
That was 2005, 2006. That was,
bad years.
Bad years unless you're a 23, 24-year-old Green Beret that just wants to get in fights. So you
loved it.
Oh, I loved it. Again, like how naive and how selfish how undeveloped of an operator. Like I wanted to be the first one in the door, even though I was the least experienced. I wanted to be the first one in the gunfight. I wanted to be like, there's a really embarrassing moment in the book that, we lost one of our helicopters, 160th, had got shot up. So our aircraft, we had to flex and change our load plans. So John, the team sergeant, is like, okay, this little punk of a kid that's 6 months in special forces, hey, you're going to be our QRF. And a good soldier would have gone and made sure the headspace and timing was good, made sure all the fills and the crypto was set. Like that's what a good Green Beret would have done. Instead, I was being a whiny little bitch, being like, John, like I'm the fastest, right? I'm the stud. I'm the one that should be on this. There's no way you're making a bad decision. You need to put me on this helicopter. He's like, we'll talk about this later. But that deployment, we were part of the Joint Special Operations Command that was hunting Zarqawi. Yes. And we were successful. We were support to the main element.
That was June of 2006, right?
That was.
Okay.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah. So we got there in January and we came home in August.
Now, I know John had a combatives background. So were you guys training?
We trained all the time.
You and him?
Yeah. Well, the whole entire team. Like it was a team requirement. It was part of our PT schedule. So, Monday was prep for range day and combatives, and sometimes like a long ruck. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday were range days. Would be whether it was sniper stuff, it was CQB, force on force, TTP practice, and then Friday was recover from the range. So like Monday and Friday were bookends of real hard physical training, and Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday were really, really hard range focused days. That was kind of our weekly schedule.
So you said when you came in, you were top 10 within your weight class in the world. Did you feel like your skills degraded? Because now you have to focus on so many things. You can't dedicate as much time to the combatives. I know you were passionate about the war. You believed in the cause.
Yeah.
Did your skills degrade during that time?
So in truth, they did. But in my brain, I was still like the best in the world, right? Like this is the invincibility and the cluelessness of young men.
The Dunning-Kruger effect, if you know what that is.
I mean, it's a real thing.
Yes.
It's a powerful thing. And that was, of course, reinforced. I was not surrounded by elite level athletes. So when I was in basic training, the Ranger Regiment drill sergeant had some of his, as this entire company hoping to be aspiring Green Berets. He brought in his little Ranger Regiment cronies, and they start talking smack to the littlest guy that were hoping to be SF. And trying to elicit a physical response. And I, of course, step up to that. And I end up like beating the brakes off these three guys while the whole entire company is toes online. And I beat three young Rangers, not kindly, cement floor, of course. And, that feeds the ego in an unhealthy way. And I get to the Q course. And of course, I'm the best fighter. Like it doesn't there in this tiny little pool of not real. Had I gone back to San Luis Obispo as the sport was just exploding, like I'm just being left behind. But I think in my brain that I'm staying with them, but I was being left.
And I know you don't have regrets, but as you look back, do you feel like you maybe missed a window within the UFC?
Yeah. Like Jake Shields and Chuck won titles, and while I was overseas watching them have the belt thrown around their waist. And those are peers. Like those are my guys, and I know how I can do with them, and I knew where I belonged in the pecking order. And then watching people that I beat time and time again go on to win titles, and I was like, "What? That guy's a champion now? That dude? Like he came to the pit and I mopped the floor with his soul."
You had to feel wildly happy for him, though, knowing that was your old tribe.
Oh yeah. So proud.
So 2006, come back from that deployment. And you continue to deploy, but you probably start to get the bug, as you just said, is you're watching guys that you're better than start making it high up into the UFC.
Yeah, so I start moonlighting, for lack of a better word.
With the approval of the Army?
Without the approval of the Army. So I would take a pass, which is a pass is like a vacation leave form for like a 3-day weekend, and I would fly on a Friday morning, and I would go weigh in on Fridays for a Saturday night fight. And I did that for about 4 years. I fought for the IFL. I fought for the ECC. I fought for like a variety of these smaller organizations until I was main event on Fox. This had worked, where nobody knew that this Green Beret out of Fort Bragg, North Carolina, as the title card pops up and it says Tim Kennedy, Fort Bragg, North Carolina, US Army Ranger. And if everybody in North Carolina is like, there are no Rangers in North Carolina, right?
And then the media will always screw it up.
Yeah, they messed it up. They messed it up for me. So,
So you, backing up, you hadn't informed the command and that comes out on the media.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So you're called in.
Yeah, my leave ended on Sunday, so that meant that I had to be at work on Monday morning. So on Monday morning at call time for PT, is Staff Sergeant Kennedy here? And of course I'm here. My leave ended on Sunday. I never really broke rules, but I just kind of wee. And so they're like, you need to go to USASOC to talk to the Sergeant Major. I'm like,
oh, no, so you skipped your battalion, your group, and went straight to USASOC, which for the listeners is the United States Army Special Operations Command. Yeah. Which is the overarching command for all Army Special Operations units.
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
Wow, special treatment for a special guy.
Yeah. Well, everyone between me, my team sergeant, and up to USASOC CSM, they were all present for said meeting because they also had all been notified that Tim Kennedy is not an Army Ranger. He was a Green Beret attached to a special operations unit within Special Forces, and he was just live main event on Fox. So that was fun.
Let's break it down. Was that they stood you at attention and dressed you down?
I had my ass chewed out before. This was more, truthfully, a honest strategic conversation of, can these things coexist? Can you be a main event pay-per-view, a main event Fox, world title challenger level fighter, and be part of a unit whose motto is the quiet professionals? There's a rhetorical question.
That's a great dilemma.
It's a good problem to have and a problem. So that was a tough.
So you basically forced them into a.
I didn't force them.
They had to come up with, protocol for future.
They did, yeah.
SF soldiers who wanted to engage in.
Yep.
Okay.
A lot of great positive things came from that. There's been a lot of athletes and video game guys that have been able to do things simultaneously. And
are you referring to the Special Forces guy that was on the Army video game team?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
He even said it, I helped pave the way for them to be successful in that. But at the time, there was no road to be paved. It was catastrophic.
From a commander standpoint, I couldn't see any reason they looked at you and said, hey, well done, son. But now we're going to get our pound of flesh a little bit because you didn't inform us and you never let your command get surprised by anything, but well played.
Yeah.
And they do it too. They're like, how many kids, how many 18-year-olds are enlisting into the 18 X-ray program because of Tim alone?
Yeah, it was insane. I mean, it was what they were spending on marketing, recruiting efforts like NASCAR. I could go out there and say one sentence like, man, if you want to go bleed with brothers, I know some guys that you can come bleed with. And
absolutely.
They would come in droves. And, because I'm like a heart on the sleeve type guy. Like there's no shtick with me. Like you got transparency, you got real, you got honest. It's like when they'd put a camera in front of me and a microphone in my face and ask me a question, they would get the truth.
So, and again, what year was that?
That was 2007.
2007. And you left active duty in 2009. Is that correct?
Yep. Ended 2009, 2010.
Because you just couldn't pass up this opportunity. You were climbing the ranks.
Yep.
You now the UFC's.
I'm back to rank number 10 in the world. The three organizations, there was Pride, Stirikeforce, and the UFC. Those were the three large organizations. Pride was predominantly in Japan. Stirikeforce was the number one competitor to the UFC. and both Pride and Stirikeforce, the phone was ringing off the hook. I was undefeated in the IFL, and had beaten really well-known people.
Dominated.
And now it was like,
Yeah.
what do we do with this guy?
And when you left active duty, did you move directly over to the Guard, or did you take a break?
No, I moved. Actually, I went. This is. If you want to get super Army, this is the dumbest, lamest things ever. Where had they left me alone, I would have stayed an E6, an E7, an E8, whatever. Active. And I would have trained and I would have done my job, and they would have just left me alone, and they would have paid me what an E6, an E7, and an E8 makes, right? Pennies. Instead, they forced my hand. Like, these are mutually exclusive things. You can't do them at the same time. So I went to the National Guard. The National Guard put me on active duty recruiting orders. So I stayed active duty for another 3 years. So I stayed active from 2004 to 2014, and they paid me hundreds of thousands of dollars to recruit for them, to do the exact same thing that I pretty much would have done for absolutely free, just because I just wanted to fight and I wanted to be part of the regiment. And I thought those two things could coexist, and they said that they couldn't. But then when they forced it, I was like, all right.
It's that old school mentality, even within special operations.
Still there.
It's still there. I like to think we're getting better. Yeah. We're getting smarter. Look at it this way. I guarantee, you joined Special Forces because of some movie, or maybe you met a Special Forces soldier and you're like, that guy is just squared away.
2 movies.
2 movies. Yeah. Which were they?
It was The Green Beret with John Wayne,
which is the classic.
Yep. Green Berets, and Rambo.
Yeah, come on.
Yeah.
I mean, do you blast your jean boots?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And for the audience, there are no Rambos.
Shoot down that Russian hind
those
with
are 2 good movies. I mean, they're second and third to Navy SEALs with Charlie Sheen, but
no doubt.
we're not going there. What trumped them all was Top Gun. Everyone wanted to be a fighter pilot.
I want to be a fighter pilot, and when Top Gun, the new one, comes out, I'm gonna want to be a fighter pilot again. I'll be like, yeah, that's the best job.
Outside of being a JTAC, I never really was surrounded by fighter pilots, but I do remember, was it Fallon, where the JTAC school was, and I'm by myself, and I go into a bar. I'm like, hey, I'm just gonna have a drink, and I come in, and I've got the military calls it a cover. And all these guys in flight suits, which, let's be honest, flight suits are just lame.
They're not cool.
No. Nobody looks cool. Cool. What do you call them? A poop shoot or something like that?
They're not cool. They're not cool.
They're drunk and they see me come in, and I'm wearing a cover, and they're like, hey, you got to buy everyone in the bar a drink. And it was one, I'm a 02, so I'm not making that much. I've got, 2 kids. Yeah. And there's 30 of them. And I'm like, no, I'm not buying you a drink. And they start to crowd around me. I was just like, leave me alone. Enjoy your alcohol. Yeah. But I'm not buying you a drink. I don't know what your customs and courtesies are.
And I don't care.
Yeah, and I don't care, frankly. So as you're still on the recruiting duty, you're pretty much focused full time on
I'm fighting. I had some responsibilities going to National Guard Special Operations recruiting events, going to high school sometimes, and some public speaking, going to some athlete events, but it was real low level. Like, they gave me a lot of time, and huge kudos to the Guard. They would let me go to real fight camps like Jackson's. They would let me go, we were trying to work where I could go with the Olympic training team and train with them, the World Athlete Program in Colorado. We were looking at all of those options, and they were really being accommodating to ensure success. It was cool.
The fact that you trained with Greg Jackson and just a set of fighters that are, again, at your level, just world class, that have defined the sport. We're going to get into that, but before we do, we're going to take a first break, and we end our breaks with what we call hard questions. Again, where it comes back to this vulnerability. The hardest decision you've ever had to make?
Man, you said something over there when we were talking. You have children of different ages. I have young children that I help coach lacrosse, and I'm there for soccer, and I'm there for basketball. My 2-year-old burnt her leg when she pulled hot spaghetti. And how horrific is it that we know how to treat children with bad burn wounds? But we know how to do that.
Yes.
And I mean, that's horrible. And I hope none of you ever have to.
I'd rather be prepared than not prepared.
Yeah. But how many times have I treated badly burnt children? I don't know how many times. So when she got burned, I was like, boom, I knew exactly what to do. But I was there. My big girls in college, I missed their entire childhood. Deployments, sniper school, ranger school, deployments, like just the list goes on of what is required of us. And all of those things are away. So my biggest regret is being away.
Not being there.
Yeah.
And, a lot of people lose sight, only 1% serves in the military these days. And I'm not saying that in a negative, light. But what they don't realize is that, it's usually the wives and the kids that pay the price.
Yeah.
It truly is, because we want to be over there. And it is very selfish
in a way. There. Like, I want to be in a fight,
yes.
And better when I wouldn't go and the teams would go and something would happen and all the things that happened explode in our brain. Like, had I been there, would it have been different? Like, they got jumped. Would I not have had security? Like in the con-op and in the concept of the operation plan, like, would I have seen as, with my experience, that had they done this, it would have circumvented this horrible thing that happened. Like, and that what if thing just goes on and on because we weren't there.
And you say you want to be in a fight. And again, you're not out in Austin in the public knocking people out. You're talking about you wanted to be in a fight where there was a purpose.
Yeah.
Where evil had attacked us.
Purpose.
In going to war with evil, which exists, is not a bad thing. I think a lot of people.
It's a beautiful thing.
It is beautiful. Even you want to go deep into the Bible. Even in the Bible, they tell you to strike down your enemies if they are of ill intent. Hardest thing you've ever had to face?
The consequences of my own decisions. It's when you look back, it's so easy, right? The Titanic was headed towards the iceberg, and had they just turned it 1 degree, it would have missed the whole entire thing early enough, But had they turned it 2 degrees, and they would have missed it so much easier. And when you're just a train wreck hitting iceberg after iceberg, and at any point you're sitting there at the helm and you can make every one of those decisions, but you don't, out of stubbornness or ego. And so the hardest thing I ever had to face was just the consequence of standing there, continuing to make the wrong decisions. And, and that went, I battle that today. I'm a super imperfect human that still makes bad decisions, but the ones earlier were close to being catastrophic.
If you go back and trace, I'm sure you would agree with this, for every bad decision in my life, for every bad outcome, I was in 100% control of all my outcomes.
Yeah.
You trace it was ego. It was just some bad attribute. I'm the cause of all my problems in life. Yeah.
Not to steal Jocko Willink, but he's 100% right. Yeah, I don't know this Jocko dude. The extreme ownership when it comes to failure, there is one of my favorite things about grappling is when you stand there, there's you and me, right? He's going to raise your hand and I'm going to stand there in shame and humiliation for the loss. And there's no one else on the mat.
Yeah.
There's no one else to point to as an excuse. There's no other reason for failure besides me. And that's a great opportunity on the mats to get a snapshot of kind of who and what you are. But that applies to everything, right? There's those failures, you are exclusively the onus of responsibility for the cause of that decision.
After the break, we're going to get back into that with victimhood, which is as much a pandemic as COVID, or I should say epidemic within the United States.
Yeah.
Hey, with that, we'll be right back. 12 businesses, and I know you're highly successful. And I'm not asking for your tax return here, and I don't even want to discuss that, but there is no reason you need to be serving right now to take care of your family and then some. None. Yet in 2017, you went back to Special Forces.
Yep. Yeah.
And I know you're still actively employed, and we'll leave it there, doing good work. Why?
I mean, it's the greatest job in the world, surrounded by the greatest humans to ever walk the face of this planet. And you said it. You surround yourself with the best. You surround yourself with the brightest. You surround yourself with the fastest, the strongest. Your level has to be raised because you're around them. Every day that I'm in a uniform, I'm losing tens of thousands of dollars. The moment I put on that uniform, the time that is spent for me to keep my currencies and in all the different things that we have to keep currencies in, tens of thousands of dollars are being lost in what is happening in my other world, my business world. So the monies can't be equated, but the value is priceless. There's no way that you can put a price on being on the teams until the day that I die or the day that they kick me off. No matter how much it costs, that is the place that I want to be. Not because I deserve to be there, because I don't, because they're all better than me. It's not because like I have a sense of entitlement because I passed these things that I have a right to be there, because I don't, because every single one of those men are better than me at everything that they do, because that's the one place that I want to be. Like, they're the best humans on the planet.
The most powerful tribe I've ever been a part of.
Yeah.
And I think since you've had the luxury of, leaving and then going back, you understand that. But when you're in it for 20 years straight, you're like, oh man, I'm tired of this. And then when you leave it, you're like, I had the best job in the world, because I am a product of my tribe.
Yeah.
My strength came from my team, 100%. I never did anything by myself. Even with the books I've written, and I've got 2 books in the works, it's with buddies.
Yeah.
I couldn't see it any other way. I mean, you're doing your autobiography. It's an autobiography that needs to be written, and I totally understand that. But yeah,
but even with that, Nick Palmisciano, West Point Ranger, he's on the cover, because every moment that I missed, every time that I walked out of that octagon, I took my gloves off and I threw them in the trash. Not even a second thought about the wraps or the gloves that, I just won my 7th in a row, and they know I'm going to fight for the world title. That means nothing to me. Like the banner, it's in the trash. The handwritten note from Mike Tyson, that was an amazing moment. Cool. I left that in the locker. My best friend, Nick, went and pulled it out of the trash. He went and pulled that banner and rolled it back up and put it in his check-in bag. Then he walked into the trash and he shuffled through it all and he found that card. And that's the guy that I'm writing this book with, because every moment that I so recklessly wasted and he was there for.
And you're very much with a lot of your companies. Some of your companies are 100% veteran staffed.
Yeah, 100%. That's right. They don't have to be. I was begging and pleading for your help this morning. I was like, man, I have 3 full-time positions I'm trying to fill right now. And I want to fill them with people that want to be part of a team, that want to be part of an organization. And I'm doing everything that I can, but they make it so hard. But how do I do it? How do I do it, Mike? Yesterday I was texting with Jared and I was asked Evan Hafer the same questions. How do we find the right minds and to be able to have the right people, but still be able to give back to the veteran community, which is the most important community in my life. And man, it's hard.
It's not easy. When it comes to the game of talent, it's hard. And quite frankly, that's why my company's called the Talent Work Group. And even though we've gotten very good at it, I mean, when you're dealing with humans, you are dealing with the biggest variable there is. And humans are freaking crazy. And somebody will sell well in an interview, then get into the job role and be a complete, utter bottom feeder. And you got to get rid of them. And that sucks. So it actually leads me, and I know you got a lot of flack for this, in the quote on Facebook where you basically said for combat veterans with PTSD to stop being pussies. But you went on and people missed the rest of the message. They just focused on that.
Yeah, but sound bites are always the worst part,
Don't cut this up to make me look like an idiot.
I don't know if you do this, but I'm also anti-gun.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
so
of course.
I didn't know that either. But
tell me what you were... And I know this is leading into victimhood.
Yep.
What was the point you were trying to make?
Resiliency, durability, all of those things happen through strength. Oh, look at this. Look at this guy hooking me up with cappuccino.
We've got coffee coming.
Yeah.
Delivered direct.
You're about to see a problem that my wife hates me for.
Coffee at close to 7 p.m.
That is delicious. God.
Good.
All right. So entitlement, victimhood, they're diseases. And they're diseases that erode the ability to make a choice to get better. And when I say stop being a pussy, you have to at some point, even if you're incapable of doing it yourself, the choice has to be made for me to say, Mike, I'm in a bad place. I need help. Okay, maybe I can't get to the gym. Maybe I can't put down that bottle of alcohol. Maybe I can't even put down that gun. But at some point, a choice has to be made for that trajectory not to hit the Titanic, not to hit the iceberg. That shift has to be made, and that's a choice. And the victim mentality, the entitlement mentality, you will stay that same trajectory. You will stay that same aspect.
Because it becomes easy.
Yeah.
And you get attention
It's so
for
easy.
the wrong reasons. So I had the pleasure of interviewing, and you probably know this guy, General Jerry Boykin, who at one point, one of the very early members of Delta Force.
Yeah, he's pretty rad.
Yeah, badass. And then he was the commanding general of USASOC. And he talked about this emotional intimacy amongst the teammates, the operators at Delta Force. And when I was interviewing him, I thought he was messing with me. But he explained it. He said, hey, because he saw me smirking, he was like, let me explain it to you, Mike. And he broke out the crayons, in which all
Don't eat this one.
my book manuscripts are all written in crayons, and then I give it to somebody very smart so that they can put it into type for me. He said, if I came to you in tears over the loss of a teammate, what you do, I said I'd wrap my arms around you, man, and say, hey, we're going to get through this. And it was true. And he was talking about culture, the culture that exists. And as we hear about toxic masculinity, I think people get that wrong. Yeah. And you are very much, and I think that the audience would agree, the definition of a man. Yet, again, you still have that empathy. Everyone has a grieving process, and everyone deals with trauma differently. And that's their right. But it seems to becoming an epidemic where people want to stay in that victimhood category. And, for the life of me, I can't figure out why that is happening. I understand it's the easy thing to do because the next hard step to recover or to get better or improve is hard.
Yeah, it's work, man. You and I have every excuse that they have. We've been blown up. We've lost friends, like physically damaged irreparably. We're at a place where the VA is like, you guys are jacked, right? And the list goes on, and it's the exact same list that they have. And you cannot ever compare trauma, whether it be physically or emotional or mental, because it's different for every single human. But the thing that is true amongst all of them, where it's even, is for it to get better, it takes work. And that work is lots of different choices. And if you're a victim and you're entitled, those choices will never be made. You will never rush to failure. You'll never get up and start exercising. You'll never put down the bag of potato chips. You'll never sit down the bottle of alcohol. You'll never go to good night's sleep. You're not going to be a good father to your children. You're not going to be a good lover to your wife. The list goes on and on and on. But ultimately, there are millions of little decisions that are both preventative for post-traumatic stress, or they're healing. The best thing that you can do for yourself is to start being a healthy human. Like maybe you need medication, but that still takes work for you to get up and go to the doctor and be transparent and be real and be like, yeah, I need help. Talking to a friend, that is a choice, and that takes work. For me to talk to somebody and say, man, I'm really struggling with this. And all of that takes work. And the victim mentality and the entitled mentality is those are exclusive things. If you have that mentality, you'll never start having that change for better. And that's what I was saying there is like, stop being pussies.
So mental health is arguably a big issue right now, not only within America, but internationally.
Yeah.
And there are more resources for people to utilize to get better. You just have to take that step. And again, for listeners with mental health, it is actually very manly to raise your hand and say, yeah, I need help.
It's fine. Last week, one of my brothers raised his hand.
Called you. And
I asked, it was going to be a big undertaking. And I asked my peers, I was like, hey man, can we go and do this? Every single one, I'm not talking like a couple of guys. I'm saying every single person there was like, oh, I'm in, I'm coming, I'm helping. There was not a moment of hesitation. There wasn't any reservation. There was no judgment. It was, that is a brother that needs help, and I am in to help that person. But that dude still had to raise his hand.
Yes. And I know for a lot of people too, it's look at your environment. If you need to remove yourself from an environment, and God knows, so my last tour was actually here in Austin, my last 2 years.
Really?
And I was freshly divorced, and I just started drinking. And I was going to the bars quite a bit. And there was a point where I'm like, I need to remove myself from this environment. And quite frankly, I met a great woman that helped do that, as well as a mental health, psychologist who is renowned within the special operations community, a guy named Dr. Chris Free, who actually coined the term operator syndrome. And these guys in Hawaii didn't charge me. every week on the phone for 2 to 3 hours until he's like, Mike, you're going to be okay, and moved on. And I owe her and I owe him for that time. Before we get to questions for the audience, I want to get into 2 things. So now, UFC fighter, Green Beret, business owner, school founder.
Yeah.
And this is huge in elementary school.
Yep.
Here in Cedar Park.
Adding middle school this spring.
And so you teamed up with Acton for that.
That's right. Yep.
Why? And what is the general charter of the school?
Yeah. So going back to a child in private school with my parents, I ended up having to be homeschooled because I had teachers that would duct tape me to chairs. I would go to the principal's office every single week and I would be spanked. Like, this is a different era. Like, this is not 2021, 2022. I'm talking when hitting a kid. I had wrestling coaches that would hit me. There was nothing wrong with me. I was a normal 6-year-old boy, totally normal. Like, that one has to be medicated. We won't even let him come back to the school unless you have a prescription and we know that he is taking this, ADHD like poison. And there's nothing wrong with me. As there's nothing wrong with any of the heroes that are in our school that look just like me at 6 years old. So I saw the writing on the wall 4 years ago. I was actually with Jocko, and Jocko's like, we're talking about recruiting within special operations and how difficult it is right now for us to find young men. It's a special, beautiful thing, just like being a feminine, beautiful woman. And I realize that there's spectrums on both of those, and those scales go back and forth. But we in the special operations community, we have to have men. We have to have ones that will run towards the sound of gunfire, ones that can do violence on behalf of their country, the ones that without a moment of hesitation will jump on top of a grenade to protect the men to their left and to their right. That is what a man will do. And that is beautiful masculinity. And I saw that being eroded in society. And Jocko was like, well, what are you going to do? And I was like,
a challenge almost.
Yeah, I'm going to start school. I said it on his podcast. And then it took 3.5 years for me to organizationally structure in a very strategic way, a school that is not impenetrable, but the way that we are set up, it's very, very difficult for any governing body to come in and deal with anything that we do. So we're a Socratic Acton school. It's a learner-driven environment. Socratic learner-driven, that means the students, which we call heroes, they're in charge of this, not even a classroom, we call them studios. So our heroes in that studio, they're the ones driving the train. And if they want to be bouncing on balls while they do their homework or doing jump rope, I don't care as long as they do their work. It is their journey and it is their process, and whatever their individual process is to be able to produce real learning, that's the goal. And that's what we say. All that is required of you is that you want to walk through these doors to learn. And that is what happens in that school. And that is what is not happening in all other schools as they're forcing mandates, doing this, like curriculum, school unions are getting, that has nothing to do
with the total lack of critical thinking and development.
With the child needing to learn how to critically think. And that's all that we do, is empower them to learn how to think.
Well, I would encourage our listeners to look that up. And the name is?
APE Cedar Park.
Okay. That's, I have no doubt that more of those models are going to pop up throughout the United States.
I'm trying to buy a big, huge campus in Cedar Park. So if anybody's selling hundreds of acres,
give Tim a call. He's easy to find. Well, I mean, you basically gave your address when you ended up on the ISIS list.
Yeah, my wife left me for that for a couple of weeks because
you went on, was it Fox News, and
Fox.
gave your address?
Yeah.
I'm actually not, I'm less worried about ISIS, more worried about the groupies that were parking outside your...
I should have thought that one through though, because my wife was real mad.
When I saw that, I was proud. I was actually hurt that I didn't end up on the ISIS list.
I know, but so as a Texan, as a Green Beret, as a fighter, when the FBI was on my doorstep and they're like, hey man, they're actively recruiting somebody in Texas to come and find you. I was like, no, they're not. Tell me more. And they're like, no, you're not understanding.
They really love me.
This is so good. And they're like, you're not getting it. I was like, no, I totally got it. That I have been traveling for 15 years of my life and been away from my now grown children trying to hunt these people. And you're telling me they're about to come to my door in Texas. pardon my erection, but this is great news. Fantastic stuff here. Okay, go on.
Not well thought out by ISIS.
No.
Not well thought out. So before we get to audience questions, one, I'm excited. Bro, you got to hook me up with an early copy of the book. Scars and Stripes, an unapologetically American story of fighting the Taliban, UFC warriors, and I love this last part, and myself.
Yeah.
What do what do the readers hope to discover in that book?
Man, I'm not throwing stones. Writing a book is a really cool thing to do. And in 20 years on Terror, there's been a lot of books. This book's not like
So there I was, surrounded in grenade pins.
Yeah.
Holding the enemy at bay by myself.
Yeah. Yeah, that's not this book.
Yeah, I know.
No, this book is vulnerable. It's real. It's every single, Scars and Stripes. How do you get a stripe as an NCO?
You earn it.
You earn it.
Grind.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then how do you get scars?
By earning it.
That's right.
Exactly.
So mistakes, failures, time, and earning. That is the point of this book. That's the title of this book. It's the process in which I failed in every single juncture, decision moment of my life. I failed, and I failed over and over and over and over again. The only problem with my failures is they were televised in front of millions, and they cost lives. That sucks, but that's the story.
This sounds like a book that I know as a parent you'd want your teenager to probably read. I know you got very vulnerable, I'm assuming, in this book.
Yeah.
It opened up things that people have not previously known.
Nope. Even people that were involved with those eras. I wrote the book in first person, and it's not like a memoir of and then I went back and it was as I'm looking at the dust settling as a van rolled over on the 101, and I'm hearing screams in every direction. I don't know whether to run to the 3-year-old that is grasping for a breath that's about to die, or that woman who I see has a compound fracture of her femur and her bone is sticking out of her flesh. That's how I wrote it. So there's a lot of vulgarity because I tried to write it exactly as I remember it and how it happened, in the first person, in present tense.
Visceral.
Yeah. So it's a raw book.
And can people, I know that's due out in June. Is that correct?
June 7th.
But pre-sales are going on Amazon?
Right now. Yeah, out on everything. Yeah, everywhere books are sold, you can get it right now.
Again, we didn't really cover Sheepdog. And I know, there's a lot of misconceptions that, Tim's just trying to teach people to be violent. That's not, you don't see the world through rose-colored glasses. You know that evil exists. And I know you're helping people be prepared, which is the greatest thing. Yeah. To do violence to protect themselves and their families. And that's what it's truly about.
Yeah. Or even hopefully have the whereabouts to not even ever have to be in violence.
Exactly.
But the only way to not go to war is to be prepared for war. You don't look at a weak, pathetic, fragile country and be like, I don't want to invade that and take their great country. You look at a powerful country and be like, I don't want to go in there.
Yeah. We know that to be true. Well, at this point, we're going to open it up to the audience. We've got a mic walking around. Please, if you got questions, and just first name, where you're from, and the question.
Hey, fellas, can you hear me?
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah, we got you.
Hey, gentlemen, thanks for all that you do. I've met both of you. Appreciate, again, everything you've done. Tim, for you, we've worked together briefly. From a guy outside looking in, oftentimes you get the misconception of being that 20 to 25-year-old guy. But I can tell you that the time that I've worked with you, particularly in the last, I'd say 12 months, 6 months, I've seen this humility that I did not know existed. And it probably, I would like to hear more about that, right? Like what are some of the things that you've done and seen that cause that humility?
Yeah. I don't live in regret, but I have stomach churning shame thinking back to the way that I talked to my superior or the way that I talked to my team sergeant, to my team leader. And it was naive, childish words out of ignorance, not knowing what to say or what to do. And, I think back to being a kid and stealing from one of my best friend's parents. And every one of those shameful moments, eats at me today, and Brandon and I, we were working on the evacuation of Americans and our allies in Afghanistan. And you want to talk about pain, man? How many people didn't you get out?
Wait. But how many people did you get out?
I know, but that's not like
15,000?
You're making me fucking cry, man. Fuck you. It's not the success that gives you humility. It's thinking about the times that you could have done it better. It's thinking about the ways that I could have been a better teammate. It's thinking about the ways that I could have saved one more life. Could I have gotten one more body on that plane? Would that plane still have taken off? Every one of those failure points caused humility. And man, I failed. Man, I failed and I failed and I failed and I failed and I failed. I wish I was an egotistical prick, because like that meant that I wouldn't have failed as much. But what you have now is a man that has failed, and I'm still here.
But this is the common thread of high performers that I've seen. They never celebrate their successes. There's a picture of Dan Gable in the 1972 Olympics where he's got a gold medal around his neck.
Yeah, I know.
And he looks like he feels he failed. He's pissed. And to give more context to the listeners there, I don't think he had a single point scored against him in the Olympics.
Nope.
And he's already going through his personal self-reflection of, if I didn't pin somebody, I exposed myself to more risk by being on that mat. Why didn't I pin him? What opportunities? And again, I'm asking, how many lives did you save? Was it 15 to 17,000? Is that correct?
We did 12,000 in 10 days. And since then, we have done another 4,000. So we're at 16,000, and we have a manifest that is, working right now as we talk.
I speak for all the listeners, and I know that's never going to be good enough for you. But from all of us to all of you that were there making that happen, thank you. And I know that's just, it falls so short. You guys should be so proud. I know we were watching it happen, and now I'm on the sidelines. I'm a civilian, and I'm proud to be. That you guys are out there doing that. And I guarantee there's, as you said, 16,000 people that are grateful that you did that.
A lot more to do.
A lot more. There always is. A long episode, but it was worth it, and lots to talk about, and a lot of things we didn't cover. But before we say goodbye, we do like to end this podcast with a few questions of our own. And then again, this gets deep, man. How's Tim Kennedy going to measure his life and whether he lived it well?
Is how much I was able to give back. I will die penniless. I will not take a single cent to the grave with me, and it will do nothing for me in heaven. So what can I do with what I have? Whether that be influence, clout, how can I use a big social media presence to raise funds for things that matter? How can I give back to the military community that has given me so many tools to give me success? I wouldn't have any success without the military, because they taught me and shaped me into being who I am and what I do. So success for me is watching my children, that my legacy, grow on to be contributing members of society and good citizens. And then being able to know that with everything that I earned, I'm able to do meaningful things to the communities that I worked for and with. Impact. That's got to be one of the most common answer. Again, interviewing high performers, it's they don't care about the accolades, the medals, the money. Yeah. It's the impact. And we were talking about this earlier in the day, because you guys, we did a workout with Tim in which he broke me. That's not true.
You broke me, and my wife said, well, I guess Tim likes to beat up on 100% disabled veterans now.
There we go.
Big man. But no, we talked about Alexander the Great said, hey, bury me with my hands outside the grave to show that I came into the world with nothing and I would leave with nothing other than the legacy and impact that I left behind. And that's powerful. Again, for all the listeners, what are the rules or codes, those keys to success by which you live your life?
Nobody's going to do it for you. You have to do it. You have to get up early. You have to work. It's God, what a horrible era that we're living in, where the perception of me and what I do is a 1 second snapshot that ends up on ESPN or my Instagram, right? Like, they didn't see the crotch rot of me in Ranger School. Like they didn't see the flesh falling off the bottom of my feet in selection. The smell. Do you remember the smell of the dudes in buds? When your body is eating itself because you're in such a calorie deficit, you haven't slept, you haven't been fed, but you're still doing the volume of work, your body literally starts eating it. And then it starts emitting this ammonia smell, this rancid, putrid smell as your body is consuming its own muscle and you're off-gassing. It's the meat of your body. You're cannibalizing your body. People never smell that.
No.
Can I smell that on my issue? No, not on there. Like those are the moments that nobody sees that are real. And I wish they could see that. I wish they could smell that.
Yeah, I think it was about 2 years ago. I went back to Buds and watched part of the Hell Week. Buddies that I served with are now the commanders of Buds.
Yeah.
God, how comfortable I've become that I couldn't even remember it. And I'm watching them. I'm like, bro, you got to stop this training. You're going to kill these kids. And they're like, hey,
they're fine.
Mike, we've got this down to a science.
Yeah.
And God bless those kids, man. We play the generation game. Hey, this next generation is weak, but still there's a percentage that are going to step up and hold that line. That's a beautiful thing. Well, Tim, so many subjects we didn't get to, man. And such a fascinating individual. And again, the listeners need to go pick up this book. I can't wait to get a pre-copy signed.
I got you.
That's the second time I've asked you to read it myself. And I always feel special when I get a special copy. I'm like, hey.
What they call them galley copies?
I know Tim Kennedy. What's up? Galley?
Galley copies, is that what they call it? The first ones that you get? Because I get my galley copies in 2 weeks. Those are the ones that you give to a famous person that then can read it. So
Buddy,
you get one.
I've written one book, which means I've got one combat deployment. So I can't, I remember how I spoke with 2 combat deployments thinking I had it all figured out. So I can't speak with any authority whatsoever. Well, again, thank you for attending. If you're in the audience, thanks for those that are listening. Again, thank you. And until next time, this is Mike Sorelli in Tim Kennedy out here.